Arcane Studios' Prey 2017 was released in the middle of 2017, unsurprisingly enough, and it had enormous acclaim when it launched. While labeled a survival game by the almighty entity known as Google, fans of the genre knew that this was an immersive sim, and one we've been waiting for quite a while. Unlike the next most recent game that could be called an immersive sim, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, Prey was unscathed by its long development period that it had, and had no tacked-on online mode designed to try and nickel and dime the player after the story, and no pre-order bonuses meant to appease shareholders into developing artificial hype for the game. Prey was the most high-fidelity, immersive sim that we had seen up to that point. Arcane Studios' Prey 2017, which, you know what, that's a mouthful to say, so herein referred to as Prey. Everybody cool with that? Okay, let's keep moving. As I was saying, Prey did not have a linear path to development. In fact, it took a decade for it to be made. Prey was initially announced in 2006 under the name Prey 2 under a previous developer. Prey 2 faced IP scuffles with Electronic Arts, change of developers, a second change of developers that finally let it land in Arcane Studios' lap, who took one look at everything they had made up until that point and scrapped it. Prey 2 was finally renamed into just Prey, was 2017 in parentheses to make sure nobody got too confused, and most of it that was from the original design of the game was gone. There were a few things left over, such as a character named Danielle Sho, who you would meet in the game. However, Danielle Sho originally was a much more overt callback to System Shock's Shodan, name and all. When Prey finally launched in 2017, it received crazy amounts of praise from critics who were fans of the genre, but also a good bit of flack from other critics who weren't so into it. Prey sits at a 79% on Metacritic and a 7 out of 10, which is high, but this is game scores we're talking about, so that may as well be a 1 out of 10 given the way game critics go about things. That's quite a discrepancy considering if you Google Prey 2017, the first handful of pages that come up are articles saying Prey is my game of the year. And while we're on accolades, despite all this praise from fans of the genre, Prey got no awards the year it came out, which, okay, to be fair, this came out the same year as Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, and a whole lot of other stuff, and, you know, come to think of it, 2017 was a great year for video games. According to some randos I found on Reddit that were able to cobble together an approximation of how well Prey did financially, Prey sold just under 1.5 million units between all consoles and platforms. And this game was on pretty much everything except like the Wii U and the Switch. With the fidelity of Prey and just the insane standard that a lot of games like this are held to when you hit the AAA tier, 1.5 million is not a good number. We have to remember that Tomb Raider sold 6 million and was considered a commercial failure. Deus Ex Mankind Divided sold approximately 2 to 3 million units during its initial sales period, and that was considered bad enough to the point where Eidos Montreal has indefinitely put the final installment of the series on hold. So when we go back and look at that 1.5 million Prey moved, that doesn't look so good for Prey and immersive sims in the future. Prey's polarizing reception isn't from any one defect, although it's not immaculate. It's simply too good of an immersive sim for its own good, which resulted in people that weren't super into immersive sim games being intimidated and even put off by its depth and polish. This leads to poor sales figures despite anyone who plays the game, like myself included, being near evangelical about it. Prey suffered from its own polish and high fidelity. The first thing we can look at is that too much love was put into Prey for any one person to appreciate. Prey is a game with little details etched into every nook and cranny, and not just high-resolution textures. If you blink during any moment, you'll miss something. Prey is a game with so many secrets and little moments that you'll never find them all in a single playthrough, and even with help, you probably may have some trouble finding them all. Here's a few that I just found now on what I consider my 3.5 playthrough of Prey that I didn't know about until I played it this time around. I think I put it at the beginning of the video, but kinda sorta spoilers for certain parts here. After rescuing Michaela and Dr. Igwe, if you go to the atrium and hide along the awning that's the wall opposite of your office, you can hear them arguing with each other about whether or not it's a good idea to trust you.
established process.
Igwe, but you knew what was in psychotronics. What was going on in psychotronics?
Well, yes, they volunteered.
Volunteers? They didn't agree.
I guess even the executive suite has some really thin walls. The gender you choose for your character, Morgan Yu, determines the position of Morgan's toilet seat in your offices, the gender of the singer in the crew quarters while you're collecting sound bites, and your secretary's opinion of you. And those were just a few things that I noticed, and there's probably a few more that are determined by your gender that I missed. If you aren't up to the task of doing the treasure hunt across the entire game map, but you really want that chipset and you try to enter the code after looking it up online or just brute forcing the number, you'll actually get a different chip that debuffs you and scorns you for trying to cheat throughout your whole scavenger hunt. Lastly, certain fire alarms on the Talos station are actually secret cupboards containing health kits, neuromods, and more, which technically I didn't find this one out for myself. I found this out by watching the GDQ speedruns of Prey, which is pretty cool. There is so much to experience in Prey, and every room aboard this expansive space station is full of secrets, and there's no way anyone can find them without help. And this sort of becomes a problem when you consider just how big of a game Prey is. With all the stuff there is to observe and take part in Prey, there's no way you could possibly experience it all in one playthrough. And this presents a problem for Prey, as the average playtime is 31 hours and change. That's close to an entire work week for your average kid going to school like me. Spread that out into what a reasonable person would play of one game over a period of time to get it done, and that's quite a bit of time that you're only going to be playing Prey. This particular playthrough took about 15 hours and change, but that's because I already knew where everything was, and I was just going to see the sites to get you guys B footage. It also doesn't help that until recently, Prey didn't have a New Game Plus option for players who want to experience everything, which is frustrating in a sense that you're going to have to struggle through that early game all over again every time you want to see what else Prey has to offer with all the paths you ended up not taking. And then the cherry on top for all of this is because Prey is so high fidelity in so many areas, it takes a while to load unless you're on SSD. Usually for Prey, it took me about inside of 10 seconds for levels to load in on SSD, but upwards to 1 to 2 minutes when I was playing on my hard disk drive. That is the second longest game I've had load on my computer, with the longest one being the initial loading period for Doom on Vulkan Engine. There's also Star Citizen on SSD, which took forever, but I don't really consider that a game, and I don't even want to think about how long that would take to play on a disk drive. There's so much to do in Prey that it's near impossible to find all the side quests marked or unmarked without outside help. Heck, there were quests that I found on my first 2 playthroughs, like the one about finding out what's going on with the Q-beam and, oh hey, we need to go figure out what happened to Michaela's dad, that I simply didn't find during this playthrough, not for intentionally skipping it, but because I just couldn't find the triggers to make the quest start. Prey is such a big game that you simply won't find things that you previously found because there's so much in it. Prey is intimidating to your average core gamer, and I'm not talking about the kind of person that is technically a gamer according to the statistics that likes to flick around Candy Crush or occasionally indulges in Sims. I'm talking about your core gaming audience, or however they like to title whatever we are. People I know who have Brotherhood of Steel tattoos on their body. People I know who rank globally in certain competitive games. And people I know that can keep up with me in pretty much every deep lore game I play are put off by Prey because they're just not used to how immersive Sims are done. It's crazy, like people I know who I can speak Binding of Isaac Ease with didn't make it past the first couple hours of Prey because just there was too much going on for them. Another friend of mine initially thought Prey was a horror game after I recommended it to them, and they have serious trouble getting through the game on easy difficulty despite the fact that they're no stranger to your typical shooter. While veterans of the immersive sim genre are familiar with the ideas of emergent gameplay, aka doing things that you aren't necessarily supposed to do in order to get something done, or the idea that not necessarily every enemy is meant to be beaten the first time you encounter them, While stuff like that is second nature to people that have played all the games with the name Shock in them and like their Thief titles, that's a little off-putting for your typical core gaming audience. And we have to remember that especially over the last couple decades, we've been spoon-fed stuff we need to do in games more and more, to the point of where games now are super duper streamlined. That's not exactly a bad thing, but we have to remember that when that happens and games come out that don't hold your hand, that becomes a big problem because suddenly the games that don't hold your hand are intimidating. It's easy to think that you're completely stumped in a certain area because you maybe didn't do a certain objective, or maybe the quest is bugged, because you entirely forget that the first real weapon you get in the game literally allows you to make a climbing path just about everywhere. And don't believe me about the streamlining of games over the last decade or so? Remember that Skyrim allowed you to complete the entire Mages Guild's quest line without casting a single spell beyond the initial thing. And on top of that, if you didn't have the spell that the guy at the bridge wanted you to cast, he'd teach it to you on the spot, and it would always be available for you to learn so that you wouldn't miss out on the quest line. And that's maybe another issue of why gamers can be intimidated by all the stuff in Prey. Usually, games, since they have so much in them and it costs so much to make and there's so much love put into these games, that developers will make it nearly impossible for you not to experience certain things. Whereas in Prey, if you don't have a certain ability to do a certain quest, well, tough luck, bud. Maybe come back in a few hours of gameplay when you farm neuromods and can now do this thing. There's a number of things in Prey that are callbacks to previous immersive sims that, while they're highly streamlined and modernized for Prey, are still off-putting to the core gaming audience, such as needing to listen to certain audio diaries or memorize certain codes in order to progress, or say having to do certain minigames in order to hack something or get a thing. Which, while we're talking about hacking minigames, I'm totally down for immersive sims going back to vampire rules where it's just a skill check. We don't need to do the thing. But when you throw in inventory management, crafting, recycling, needing to get certain things in order to progress, and all that stuff, that can be intimidating to your core audience. And when you also factor that in with just how big of a game Prey can be and how hard it is at the beginning, the core gaming audience is going to be intimidated by what is otherwise an amazing game. However, in spite of how amazing Prey is the perfect excuse for publishers to not greenlight games like Prey. We've touched on this earlier, but let's go back to Prey's sales figures. Around 1.5 million, and that's across all platforms. Let's consider how long Prey took between the many studios it had to go through, and it's extremely unlikely that Prey even came close to breaking even. In a time where games need to sell ridiculous gangbusters numbers in order to have a guaranteed sequel for a single-player affair, that's really foreboding. In order for games like Prey and the latest Deus Ex to keep surviving, they need to either sell these crazy stupid numbers, or in Deus Ex's case, have a tacked on multiplayer mode with microtransactions and pre-order stuff to try and get people to play exorbitant amounts of money for a game that also comes with a stupid little figurine or something. Because we haven't raised the prices of a game in a decade now. Like, it has been locked at $60 since the Xbox 360, which, by the way, I made a video about this whole affair that nobody watched, so if you want to check that out and learn more about the problem with game prices, click on this. But moving forward, this eventually happened to Prey 2. While the DLCs weren't necessarily bad, it was basically, hey, let's tack on some buzzword genres to this game. So instead of meaningful story DLC like, say, Prey's equivalent of a Minerva's Den, we got a roguelike and a Gary's Mod prop hunt for Prey, which, nothing against them, but I would have rather had the Minerva's Den type expansion to Prey. And even with those, I'm not sure that has really moved Prey's numbers enough for whoever is sitting in a high-backed leather chair to consider Prey a success. And that's grim, because games like Prey, no matter how wonderful they are, no matter how great they're going to be when we play them 10 years later and realize, yeah, this is still a really good game, I want to play this more. This is the kind of game that when the next pitch comes, the executive's gonna sit down with the producer and say, "We love you, man. You're the best. That's why we keep you here. Remember that you are the best. But unfortunately, we just don't have the kind of budget to greenlight a project like this. So you're gonna have to go work on Sports Ball 2K whatever." And we have to consider that maybe games like Prey are entirely contingent on how well the main mover of a game company is doing. Maybe partially the reason why we haven't seen the next Bioshock project in the sunlight yet is because NBA 2K whatever hasn't sold enough LeBron James loot boxes. And maybe that's what it's gonna be in order to get the next Deus Ex installment, is their thing is going to have to be crazy good, whatever else Eidos is working on. I honestly don't know. So that's when we're gonna get Deus Ex, and maybe the next Prey, like Prey, let's say 2020, is entirely contingent on how well the new Fallout game does, which, wait a minute. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no! Well, this sucks. If nothing else, at least we got Prey. Prey is far better than we had any right for it to be. Prey is basically everything that anyone who plays immersive sims or anything like it could ever ask for. A deep world to explore, multiple ways to do pretty much every task in the game, and at least to some extent, your choices regarding the story matter and will affect the ultimate outcome of the game. Well, sort of in Prey's case. The combat is fun enough, and there's a bunch of different ways to go about fighting or sneaking past the enemies in this game. And even if, as usual, it's really hard in the beginning, that just makes it all the more satisfying towards the end when you can basically one-shot half the enemies in the game while sprinting through levels at breakneck speeds. Prey is an absolutely amazing game, and even if gamers at large seem to be a bit put off by its level of polish and just how immersive of an immersive sim it is, at least we still have it, and they can't really take it away from us now that it's out in the world. Even if they stop making games like Prey, even if someone decides in a big game industry meeting, you know what, no more immersive sims, they suck and they don't make enough money, we still have Prey, and frankly, if Prey is the last immersive sim we get, that is a pretty good last hurrah to end on. Will Prey be the last immersive sim? Probably not. We're probably gonna get something down the line. Even if they suddenly become sparse releases, maybe once a decade or so, we're still going to get games like Prey because there are still people like you and me who want to play games like Bioshock or Prey, System Shock, Thief, Dishonored. The immersive sim is still going to be around as long as there are people that want to play them. And if you somehow haven't played Prey 2017 by Arcane Studios yet, you owe it to yourself to at least give it a try. At the very least, you'll help ensure that the next generation gets a game like Prey. Thank you so much. Sign-offs are weird and stupid, and I don't know how to do them. Bye. Get out of the chair. Get out of the chair. Wobble boy. Get out of the chair. Please get out of the chair. Get out of the chair. Please get out of the chair. Will you please get out of the chair? Please get out of the chair. I just got this. Like, it's secondhand, but I just got this. I would like to enjoy my purchase. You know what? New plan. My butt's going here. I'm just gonna sit on you. I'm sitting on you. I'm gonna do it. Oh wow, that actually worked. This is my chair.